As usual, a lot is going on in the world. And of course, we are over here at Pod TV keeping you informed about a number of the things that are taking place. I know that there has been concerns even about the sports world because I was actually reading a story about the Kentucky Derby and they were talking about the amount of horses that went down on this particular race that was this past weekend and all in that space. So, who knows, a significant event that will be celebrating his 150th birthday on next year might not be around because it might be running into troubles because of folks wondering about the safety concerns in that particular sport. And of course, folks are paying attention to a number of the other sports things that are going on as well. And of course, there are a number of things that are happening in the world that are definitely tragic that a lot of people are paying attention to. I was going to try to find out from Steve, and hopefully he'll be coming in later about that region of India that was going through some turmoil of its own and all along those lines. And of course, there are another incident of the shootings that take place in a regular basis. As a matter of fact, there was one in Texas recently. So a Texas gunman was there, and there have been over 200 U.S. mass shootings this year, and there are new details emerging about the Texas shooter, including the fact that they might have been involved in some white supremacy activities as well. So a security guard and an engineer who was shopping was with a friend were among those that were killed. And there are a lot of folks that are wondering about the policies we have with guns and all in that space. So there are a lot of folks out there that are concerned about guns and how guns are impacting our society. I was actually just having a conversation with earlier today on Clubhouse about the nature of what our youth are going through. And a lot of people are concerned around the mental health of our youth. If you think about those that are in their early 20s, they've gone from everything from the incident in New York with the Twin Towers and all in that space, that very prominent terrorist attack, to the pandemic, to a number of other things that are going on in society and all along those lines. So that is some of the news stories that I am seeing, and I am seeing others as well, including one that involved a Texas migrant shelter. So 8 were dead after pedestrians were struck by a car outside of a Texas migrant shelter. And of course, I'm sure we'll be hearing from Sasha about the Ukrainian war. Apparently, Russia is launching its biggest kamikaze drone attack and all in that space. And their evacuations from Zaporizhzhia renew concerns about a nuclear plant safety. So that is going on in the world. And of course, a lot of people are also paying attention to the debt ceiling. And I know that we'll be talking about that on Economic Monday and all in that space, because a lot of folks are wondering, are we in a recession? Are we heading to a recession? Are we in a depression? Are we heading to a depression? And all along those lines. And I'm also seeing stories that involve around Texas and its abortion ban and a number of other news stories as well. And even there in California, there's even conversations around reparations, because a reparations task force has voted to approve recommendations for the payment of reparations to African-American Californians. So a panel in California created to consider reparations for Black residents voted over the weekend to approve recommendations for the payment of reparations for injustices and discriminations stemming from slavery. So that was in a Saturday meeting in Oakland, which was the 15th public meeting of the task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, according to Camilla Moore, the chair of that said panel. And that's just some of the things that I am seeing in the world. And a lot of folks are trying to figure out what Ron DeSantis is doing with Disney and how that fight is going to impact whether he will officially become a candidate or not become a candidate. And I'm sure that folks may have some thoughts around some of these news items that I have brought to the attention. And all along those lines, like I said, Steve would usually be here doing this opening monologue, but that's some of the news stories that I saw and all in that space. So I'm going to bring in Nick Valveda, the boss of the network, and glad to see that the network is still continuing to do well and all in that space. And I did say that I've got Sasha Starr, who's got some thoughts about what is going on in the Ukrainian and Russian war. And of course, I've got Lee Newton Rhodes as well. But Nick, what's going on? You're on mute. Mute is not helping you.
Oh, good. We have a special guest we're supposed to bring on.
Yes, and I'm going to get to that as well. We've got a very dear friend of mine who is also doing some amazing work in the space of being a motivational speaker and just an amazing lady in general. She does her Thursday Empowering You show with her co-host Shawnee Smith, and that is, of course, Barbara H. Smith, and she's just doing some truly amazing work in the space of what she does in terms of coaching. Business leaders, coaching folks to be the best speakers that they can be, and all in that space. She is a truly amazing lady. So glad that we've got Barbara with us and all in that space. So how are you doing, Barbara? I know we've got or you have another book that is out. It's in our background and all in that space. And of course, you've got some amazing ladies that are part of this, I believe, second book and all in that space. But how is it going, and how are you doing on this particular lovely day here in the East Coast?
I am great and grateful. Thank you so much, Nick and Mark, for having me on the show. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a new book out.
Yeah.
It's Empowering You, the second volume, Let Go of the Past and Step into Your Greatness. This is an anthology of 7 lovely ladies who have been through struggles in their lives and have decided to become authors. They didn't really know how to begin. And so instead of creating an entire book, what the anthology does is allows them to become an author in a part of a book that is going to be already marketed. We're doing all of the project management, the book cover, as you see behind me, all of the components that go into creating a book. And it is self-published, will be out on Amazon in August 2023. So thank you, Nick, for allowing me the opportunity to be on the show this morning. Thank you, Mark, always for being behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and doing everything in between. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
No, you're greatly appreciated. What do you say is one of the resonating messages that the women are given in the book? Because I know that the book is truly amazing, and you've shared with me some of the women that are in the book. I want to say that even your mom might be in this particular one and everything. So what are some of the things that resonate in terms of the messages from this particular book?
Well, in this book, every single person in the book is a mother. And so from the standpoint of how they became who they are today and what things may have hindered them, but allowed them to walk through, press through, go through to become the phenomenal women they are. So women's issues, women's empowerment, I'm all about empowerment, women's struggles, and how they overcame those struggles is the common theme throughout the book.
Yeah, and see, that's what I like about your book and your thoughts, Barbara. You're all positive in terms of everything that you do. And that's the reason I want you on early, because when the next group comes on, they're not like that. Some people have even told me that have been on the show, it's a food fight. So the thing is, after you're gone and we press all the positive nature, then we're going to bring on the food fighters. And you're welcome to stay, but if I were you, I'd leave.
Well, I figure, Nick, there is enough negativity in the world. There's a lot of trouble in the world today. There is a lot of things going on. There is a lot of people hurting, internally behind the scenes. The pandemic did this number on all of us, where we are constantly in a state of really PTSD. We are still struggling. Many of us have lost loved ones. Many of us have lost ourselves behind these cameras. And so I bring light, love, and blessings to the world. And I bring light, love, and blessings to people who are hurting. So I leave all of the negativity, and I know there's a lot of things going on in the world, but I leave all the negativity and all of the hardship and all of the hard stuff to people who are doing the shows that you do. And I'm okay with that. And so if you don't want positivity and light, then don't come to my show. I'm just saying.
No, speaking of that positivity and light, there's a lot of negative stereotypes about a part of the world that I know that you are going to go back to and all in that space. I still got to get one of those trips one of these times, because it has been on my bucket list to get to Africa and everything. But I just wondered if you could share some of your thoughts about your trips to Africa, because a lot of people in all cultures have this very negative stereotype of Africa, and you have definitely shattered that, and have even brought some people that are from there that are continuing to shatter that. So I would love to hear your thoughts about the continent, and it is made up of multiple countries, but your thoughts about those countries that you've had the pleasure of visiting.
Well, thanks, Mark. Yes, I will be returning to Uganda, and we say Uganda. The proper pronunciation, by the way, is Uganda. Uganda and Kenya again this year. In a couple of months, in July, I'll be leaving. But what I experienced there is love from the people. Now, is there poverty? Absolutely. But let me ask you a question. Is there poverty in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're the richest country in the world, yet we still have poverty on this continent. But when I go to Kenya, what I am there for is the same thing I'm about all the time, and that's uplifting the people. The majority of the population is young. From 19 to 25 is the majority, 80% of the population. And so there are a lot of opportunities to help them grow. The infrastructure in some places is not stable. I grant that. But there is a lot of commerce. The natural resources are all there. And all other continents and countries are coming in to excavate materials from the continent of Africa. And the problem, as I see it, is not enough commerce being done between other countries and places that I go. And yes, Dan, poverty is a state of mind. It's not can be, it is a state of mind. So I go there with, again, positivity and light, and I go there with training because my company, BHS and Associates, is a training organization. And we go there to train young entrepreneurs on how to do business with the United States as well as each other. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, definitely. I've got to ask you a teasing question, and it is definitely a teasing question because we're getting ready to get into the political circles, and I know that there are some candidates that probably need your celebrity speaker training. So if those candidates that have a harder time speaking need your services, are you available to help them? Because I do know that there are some candidates that are out there that are probably not the best speakers, and some that may be given a little bit too much hyperbole in some of their speaking, so they may need to tone it down. But I was just wondering if you are available to anybody, whether they are running for state, regional, or national politics. I mean, Steve Rao might be becoming Congressman Rao, so he might need your help as well. So are you available to folks that need the political training as a celebrity speaker trainer?
Absolutely, Mark. You know, we learn to talk when we're 2 years old or thereabouts, but we've never really learned how to present. And in a Barbara quote, every conversation is a presentation. So whether you're presenting to one person or 100,000 people, you have to be able to capture your audience's attention in the first few words. And so I'm always willing and able to help other people with their presentation skills. Again, whether it's 1 or 1 million, you have to be able to first identify the problem that your audience may be experiencing, and then tell them why you are the solution. So I help people with those kinds of things. You can reach out to me at barbarahsmith.com, and there's a contact form there. You can reach out to me again, barbarahsmith.com. Don't forget the H or you'll get someone else. barbarahsmith.com.
Appreciate that. Hey, Steve, are you ready to be Congressman Rao? And I was going to ask you about that disaster in India if you came on, because I did hear about that this early this morning and all in that space. So I didn't know if you had heard any new news about what was going on.
No, I wasn't prepared to talk about that. I've been a little bit behind in the news cycles, but thank you for the promotion from council to Congress. But I am getting addicted to Washington. I want to welcome Barbara to the show. And yeah, I think education is so important. I think as we see the acceleration of AI, we're going to see increased automation, which is going to displace a lot of white collar workers. So I think it's critically important that we focus in on skills development. I think entrepreneurship is critically important too. India, I just got back from a meeting with the Indian ambassador last week, and India has 100,000 startups now, and 30 of them are already billion-dollar companies. So their prime minister is getting very serious about providing more educational opportunities to the 60% of the population, which is under the age of 26. So
Right.
this is going to be really big in terms of, it's going to be helpful to the global economy that there's that many people that can be trained for these shifting economy. But we're going to have an educational system that's more nimble, flexible, agile, and commend the work that you're doing. And Mark, I'm going to research what happened in India. I don't know what happened.
No problem at all, and everything. But Lee, you're here. You've been listening. You're oftentimes having thoughts and reflections on education and everything. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts about what Barbara is doing and just in general. But always glad to see you here as well.
I'm not sure everything she's doing, but her attitude is amazing. Being, thinking positive, looking at the bright side of things, and also I love her smile.
Oh, thanks, Lee.
You're welcome, ma'am.
There's no doubt about that. She definitely has an amazing smile and all in that space. For those that are watching the new show, because sometimes the shows are connected or all under the Pod TV umbrella, but sometimes somebody may be watching one show that isn't familiar with as much of the other show. So that being said, if you can tell folks about the you show on Thursday and some of the premier guests that you've had and some of those that you have really enjoyed having and some of the lessons that you have learned from those guests. Because like I said, as the producer of that show, I know that you've had some amazing guests and some amazing conversations. So if you want to share a little bit about what's going on with Empowering You, which is on Thursdays, I'm sure that the folks that are here on the World Edition would like to hear about that, because there might be some folks that are not aware of one show that need to be aware of it.
Wow, Mark, thanks so much. The Empowering You show is all about showcasing small business owners and people that are doing great things in the community. Anybody's invited. You can just reach out to my assistant, Shawnee Smith, at support@barbarahsmith.com. That's support, SUPPORT, at barbarahsmith.com. But we have amazing guests all the time. I never know. I go to all kinds of networking events and I meet incredible people like the first African-American NFL football coach, Fran Harris, who is a WNBA professional. Last show, we had a young lady who is natively born in Kenya, but now lives in China and doing her education there. And she's all about self-love. And she talked more about how many of us don't love ourselves and how she became a victim of not loving herself, and then how she turned it around to now become a thought leader in the self-love and self-care space. So we have all kinds of visitors that come and talk about what they do to make the world a better place. And again, my show is all uplifting, all enlightening, all empowering. And we really rarely get down into the depths of the deepness and the hate and the hurt that's going on in the world. So again, if you don't want the light, then the uplifting, then my show's not one you want to watch.
Hey, I've got to teach you, because you had something that I know that Nick tries to get on a regular basis. I meant to tell you that when you had that show on this past Thursday, because I do know for a fact that Nick has been trying to figure out ways to get into that Chinese market, just like the Indian market, because those are two large growing populations and all in that space. So the fact that you had a guest literally coming from China, and I forgot which of the provinces that she was coming from, but she was a amazing guest and definitely gave a lot of insights including what she was going through in her education process while getting, I believe it's her master's degree there in that space and everything. So definitely she was a amazing guest, and we got to learn a lot about her insights on China as well. So definitely that is something that we don't oftentimes hear. So just hearing that voice was a good voice to hear.
Yeah, I want to trickle back to what Lee said about my smile. You know what I normally tell people when they say I have a beautiful smile? I paid a lot of money for these teeth, right? I stayed in the dentist a lot, but I appreciate your compliment, and I do not take it lightly. I appreciate being on the show today with you gentlemen, and I'm probably going to bounce right about now. So that you guys.
No problem. The only thing I was going to say is you get ready to bounce, and I definitely appreciate that, and we'll get into some other conversation. But one of the things that you do regularly that I know folks may be wondering about is too often you'll go to hear a speaker and there's this whole notion of the person reading the bio. I know I've been guilty of that at festivals and all in that space, but I try to get away from that, tell a joke, tell something to break the ice. And I love the way that you do that and even get your speakers to do it, because you oftentimes tell them to kind of reimagine their history, but in a positive light. And I know you tell the whole story about being a race car driver at a very young age and an engineer at a very young age. And I love to hear you share that story in the very eloquent way that Barbara does it. I just kind of gave a more succinct version of it that wasn't as elegant, but I do love the way that you get your people to rethink those introductions, because there are way too many people that do the boring, I can pick up the program and read what y'all are reading and everything, and you get them away from that. But if you'll share a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I teach how to do an introduction. Many times you go to an event, the biography is already written for you, and you get a chance to read it as an adult, right? And then somebody says, we're going to introduce our speaker, and then more times than not, the speaker, the introducer, will take the bio that you've already read and reread it again. And I think that's disrespectful, because it assumes that adults don't read. So what I do is teach how to do an introduction, and an introduction is maybe 5 lines or 6. Something about the speaker that's coming up that you might not know, something that intrigues the audience so that they will be on the edge of their seats to talk to you or listen to you when you speak. So my introduction is written out on a large piece of paper attached to a clipboard, typically if I'm in a live presentation, and it goes like this. Coming to the stage now is a woman who was an engineer by age 3, an instructor by age 8, and a race car driver by the ripe old age of 16 years old. Help me welcome Barbara H. Smith. Done. Intro done. Now, what that does is people are going, oh my God, how was she an engineer by 3? And those 3 things are stories from my past. They're the headlines of stories from my past. So the one you mentioned, Mark, was the race car driver. Mm-hmm. And so I go into the story about how I was 15 years old. My father has his own business. He bought a car that happens to be a 1968 Plymouth Barracuda hatchback with a Hemi engine. The men are drooling. And you're sitting there, and all of a sudden, now they're really interested in what you have to say. The end of the story is, I parked the car in my driveway, I sat in it and became a licensed driver at age 16. Ladies and gentlemen, a 16-year-old race car driver. It was a race car, and he bought it, and I drove it.
Makes sense to me. That is a truly amazing story.
Yeah, we it's a strategy, and we take your stories. Everybody has them. You take your stories and come up with 3, maybe 4 headlines that are intriguing. Like my sister's, one of hers is, we used to have a scooter at our house, and she crashed it into the garage, right? And so when we were going through what she should say, her title was, she was a crash dummy at age 8.
It's interesting you said that. And then,
you like that, did you, Dan?
It's interesting you said that, Barbara, because yesterday, as you know, I don't oftentimes go as much as I used to go, but I will sometimes pop into Clubhouse, and I was in the Fields of Dreams early this morning, late last night, and everything. And one of the things I was doing was I was talking about my family legacy, which you've heard me talk about as well. And the person who was actually a person in the science field was like, wait a minute, I can't believe how modest you were being about that and everything, because I was mentioning that W.E.B. Du Bois had visited with Dad when Dad was a child, like around 7 or 8, and the things around what my grandmother did in terms of setting up that African-American library. And everybody was giving me a rough time because they were like, wait a minute, you don't understand. Maybe you don't understand the legacy, or maybe you're just being overly modest. But I come from a modest family that doesn't believe in necessarily toting those kind of things, unlike some other folks. So that was just an interesting conversation to have folks literally stop me and say, we've got to get in touch with you. This needs to be a film and everything. I'm going like, well, I hadn't really thought about that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, Barbara, and really appreciate you being with us today.
I appreciate you.
It's been great. We'll have you back.
I appreciate you.
Definitely appreciate it.
Great day, guys. Enjoy your show.
You too. Thank you.
Well, to get started, I'm sorry I was late today. Some of the news are breaking. Janet Yellen is is asking that they raise the debt ceiling or we're going to go into an economic meltdown. But we've heard that before. It happens almost every year. It's like the boy who cried wolf. There was a massive shooting in Allen, Texas, 7 dead, 22nd gun shooting since the new year. Really, just I don't know whether we cover them more or it's just happening more often. It is
Steve,
never.
you know what I would recommend, Steve? Sorry. There is a shooting every week, if not more often. Okay. So don't talk about shooting. Talk about weeks when there is no shooting.
Yeah,
So
that's a good idea.
this week there was no shooting whatsoever. That would be a great news. But the shooting is a usual thing. Why
It
would
gets to the point.
shoot?
It gets to the point where every week, you're talking about it. The other news, I don't know if you have an update for us on Russia and Ukraine, Sasha, today. Any updates you want to give us?
Well, situation in Ukraine is in very shortly. I'll tell you what's happening there. Basically, the war against Ukraine in Russia was not popular until recently. What's happening is that people realize that their life is getting worse and worse. The future of Russia is very uncertain. Their own future is very uncertain. So we might as well try to do everything possible to win Putin this war because, okay, he might be son of a bitch and so on, but the war is already there. It's not, there's no referendum of whether start war or not to start war. It's already there, and there will be one of two outcomes. It will be a victory, which will help all of us, regardless what Putin, what bastard he is, and so on. But still, it will be good for all of us. Or it will be the losing side of the war, which will be extremely bad for all of us. So it's nothing to do with Putin. It's nothing to do with reasons for this war or so on. It's just becoming existential war. For Ukraine, it was from the day one, and now in a way for Russia as well. So it will be very easy for Putin to pull off new 2 million, 5 million mobilization efforts or so on. The only thing is that they don't have any ammunition to fight with. So they will send this human meat to Ukrainian meat grinder. So they will go through more meat.
Shovels and pitchforks. Shovels
Sasha?
and pitchforks.
Yeah.
Dan,
Yeah.
there's a podcast that's out. Robert Kennedy interviewed Douglas McGregor. It's worthwhile to listen to. It's a little over 30 minutes. It's concerning the Ukraine conflict. It's fascinating. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, so please watch it before tomorrow's show or listen to it. Gives you a lot of background and details that are not really in the public view.
That's interesting.
So that's the links that you sent.
That's the link I sent, right, with the description right underneath it.
Okay, good. We'll do that for sure. So there are no good news from Ukrainian front. It seems to me, from what I read, that the Ukrainian attack has already started slowly, but they are now doing artillery, the sort of preparation for the attack. The attack could be on many different points. Nobody knows actually where, because what they're doing now, they're attacking almost on all 1,000 kilometers front line. So let's watch next 2 days. It will be quite revealing.
Sasha, does the United States have a coherent plan with Ukraine other than blanket just to support them, like Vietnam, Afghanistan? We get into these conflicts, we have no plan. We just do it day by day. Do we have a plan?
Well, from it appears to me that they do have a plan. It does not put Ukraine in the center of the U.S. actions and desires what to do. However, the main desire of the United States and NATO, perhaps, is to weaken Russia as much as possible. That's the main goal. now, byproduct of this goal would be a victory of Ukraine in this war, and this is why Ukraine is getting all the military help. And I've heard that they already got 98% of all promised weaponry, ammunition, and so on. 98% is a large number, and probably as we speak, it's already 100%. But we'll see. So to weaken Russia, so in next 50, 100 years, it will never, ever be able to do what they've done in Ukraine. That's a major goal.
Thank you.
I'm trying to look at. Did you all watch the coronation?
I skipped it. Royalty's not my thing. I don't want it here, and I just don't have an appreciation for it.
It's funny that my son said the same thing watching it. 18-year-old, or you're going to be 18 this summer. That why are we watching all of these things about monarchs when we, Britain took their wealth from all these other countries and colonialism and as a youthful who actually likes studying government and history, was quite surprised that everybody in the family was around the TV watching King Charles. And I think there's just something about people that like the drama of the royal family. 20 million viewed it around the world, I think, or at least in Britain. But, it is what it is. I don't know really whether the monarchy has any is going down in popularity so much.
I watched it.
Yeah.
Also, Steve, interesting, the Commonwealth, they said, had 2.6 billion people that are part of the British Commonwealth. Okay, so I had to fact check that because I thought, oh, that's a lot of people. And they're right. There's 2.6 billion, like in billion, like more than actually, India is part of the British Commonwealth even today. It's not more of a social club than it is a real integrated force. But India, Pakistan, Canada, Australia, they're all part of the British Commonwealth. So they didn't have 20 million; they had 200 million people watch it. Okay, so when you watch this thing, it's right out of medieval times because they're coronating they're crowning. My wife corrected me. They're crowning the king, and they haven't done that in 70 years. The King of England or the head of the Commonwealth.
Passing of the grenade.
Whatever, yeah, passing the grenade. But you can't ignore 2.6 billion people that are supporting it. With that, yes, it's right out of medieval times, and it is what it is out there. The United States is not part of the Commonwealth. You are.
Good Kentucky Burberry today.
Canada is part of Commonwealth, and there was more than one referendum that Canadian people want to keep the Queen at that time, now King, of course, and so on. I think there is of course, it's so symbolic in many ways. However, it almost assures you the noble person as the head of the state, instead of a situation like in the United States where somebody like Donald Trump can become a president. And this is absolutely incredible event, which extra time is assuring the validity of being king and queen of England has a lot of merits, of course.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, remember that's based on hereditary, and purportedly the U.S. is based on meritocracy, which I think is.
And where is the meritocracy?
There is no meritocracy.
There is no meritocracy
in the U.S.
No, it's hereditary here too. If you look,
it's hereditary here too. No, I
look at the bloodlines. It's
hereditary here too.
It's the ring knockers and the networks. It's the people who. I mean, the only one that broke that mold really was Trump, because he really wasn't a member of the club. No one really wanted to accept him in the wealth circles. I mean, certainly.
No, they didn't want to accept him because he was New Eurasian. He was a jerk. That's the reason they didn't want to accept him.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is,
so like Steve Martin, right? And the jerk, right?
The fact is, he did use his money to get to his position, and he didn't even use his money. He used his father's money to get to his position. So
Nick, he runs
this guy was a meritocracy.
What's your point, Nick? What's your point? What's your point?
By the year of
Trump is
2000,
not part of. He's not part of the meritocracy. He's not.
No, because he lost.
Trump
he
is part
have
of the hereditary.
one correction.
Granted, it's only one generation back.
He ran through his father's money by the year 2000. There
That's
was
what I'm
no
saying.
father's money. He spent it all. He squandered it, everything.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
he came up on Russian mafia's money. So he built up all his name and his presidency or so on Russian mafia's money. And even now, he comes back to them because he's going bankrupt. So now he wants to sell Mar-a-Lago to Russian mafia or so on. We'll see how successful he is.
Well, I mean, between the Chinese owning Biden and the Russians owning Trump, we're screwed, right? We're screwed.
That's a good point.
Well, that's a good point. See, the regular U.S. person, and they have this Gini coefficient that shows mobility in the United States, and it's pretty bloody low. In other words, bottom line, and I know the viewers don't want to hear this, you're born and die in the class you were born in. So if you're born poor, you're going to die poor. You're born rich, you're going to die rich, and there's no mobility. Good period. That's
well. I have to say that's not true in my case.
No, I'm saying today. Maybe not when your generation, Dan, but I'm saying today. The person who's born today is going to find out that there is very little mobility in between social classes in the United States.
Well, I mean, it's still possible for some bright kid to go to school,
and then they'll highlight it like it's the norm. It's not the norm.
No, but it's based on brains and ability. I mean, really, if you can do well in school, get the scholarships, move on, work hard, the American dream is still attainable if you're willing to do the work. And the problem is that you're not programmed for that, because if you're brought up in a poor family, you don't have the habits and the vision of what that's all about. That's the advantage of being born into a wealthy family, is because you know something about what that looks like and how the educational opportunities and networking works. So yeah, it's harder for someone like my mom was a single mom. She was 15 when she had me, and I've just been very fortunate to move up and get education and to make a life for myself, and that's because of the American dream, the American opportunity. And when I was going to college, I got Pell Grants. I went to my doctoral programs. I had the GI Bill. It wasn't very good, but it was better than nothing, right? And so, God bless America. It's still possible if you want it enough. If you can dream it, you can do it, as long as you have the mental acuity to do it.
You're so positive.
I think a lot of it's the culture, because I was actually I'm the only one of my father's children to remember actually being poor until I was about 10. I think because he was just coming from India and he wasn't making much money until he really became established as a surgeon, and then we moved into the nicer side of Charleston. But I think a lot of it's the mentality. I'm the hardest working of the kids, but I remember I've really only relaxed maybe a few days in my entire life. I mean, I literally work every day, 7 days a week. I work 12 hours a day. I have a problem relaxing, and I have OCD a little bit. Yeah, because I just can't. I don't know any other way. But it made me who I am today.
What's your birth order?
I'm the firstborn.
You're the first.
Yeah, that makes sense. I am too.
You've done studies on that. The first.
I'm going to be really honest here and transparent. Is that where a lot of these, especially right now, we're in Asian American Heritage Month, and the thing that bothers me a lot is how I'm noticing the younger generations of Asians, or just in general, everyone's starting to use kind of the race card, that we've got to fight racism, we've got to fight this. And honestly, I don't believe that that's the right way to approach this. I think we have to attack racism where we see it. I think that we don't use it as a shield to protect us. I think you got to get in the ring. I love boxing analogies. Recently, it's been working for me politically. You got to get in the ring, and you got to start swinging. And you're going to have some good rounds. You're going to have some bad rounds.
Right.
But
the
I mean,
interesting thing about the whole issue of racism, it's now been weaponized so that those who are claiming racism are being racists. It's weird. It's this weird. And so we get on these programs and we're trying to talk about stuff, and then we get played with all these racism games and these intellectual arguments about how we're not being logical about this, or how we're not, and we're being mansplained by people that don't know shit about anything, and it's just really annoying. And and most people who are logical can understand they're being played. That's the problem. The division of racism is racist by its nature.
Here's an interesting stat that I read the other day. 90% of all violent crimes are created by men. Okay? In other words, the men are the guilty parties in 90% of all crimes in the United States. Why is it that we don't bring stuff like that up? And if you look at the mass murders, how many of them were women? Anybody know? Anybody seen one? Steve? Dr. Dan? Sasha? Any of these mass murders women?
No, LaBelle, mate, but that's just 2 kids, right?
Wait a sec. In this article in Chess Magazine, where we discussed with Nava why men are better players than women, John Hopkins University, which did research quite a bit on the subject, they came out with the idea that among men there were much more geniuses than women, which is true if you take history of sciences, music, poetry, just almost anything. On the other hand, there are a lot of more criminal minds, idiots, and simply mentally sick people among men.
Psychopaths who go into
Psychopaths,
politics.
just name it.
Like Biden, he's a psychopath. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it.
Okay, listen, with his old age, it could be forgiven.
No, he's been a psychopath all of his life. If you go back and look at his history and his lies and the things that he's done,
Listen,
I mean, no, it's not a criticism. Most CEOs of companies are psychopaths.
Absolutely. Dan, you have to prepare to live with him for another 5.5 years. So what can you do about it?
I don't think he's going to live that long.
Steve, when are you running for major office? We're waiting.
It's even worse because then Kamala will become a president. So actually, Biden is keeping us alive from Kamala Harris' presidency.
Oh, that's true, and
that's his noble mission.
He should dump her actually and get someone legitimate, just because he could die. I mean, why put the country in peril by having her as the VP when everyone knows that she's an idiot? I mean, it's sort of like, get somebody that can actually do the job just in case you bite the bullet.
Wouldn't it be funny? Hey, wouldn't it be funny if we went back? I never thought about this. If we went back to the way it was during the founding years of the country, where the president and vice president were the top vote getters.
So, well, you know what?
That'd be funny.
What if it was Trump Biden or Biden Trump?
Oh, that'd be
hilarious.
They kill each other. They kill each other.
No, maybe they'll end up getting along.
They probably would.
Here's a really great idea.
Why not?
Biden needs not one; he needs 2 vice presidents, because the chances are that he's not going to survive.
Oh, how about this?
So he will have Kamala will become a vice president, so she'll become president.
I got a great idea.
If Trump, vice president will become vice president.
If Trump lost to Biden, he could make Trump Commerce Secretary. Because Trump's a good businessman, right? Well, he's been.
Well, some people say. No, hey, how about this? Robert Kennedy as his VP.
Put a Kennedy in there.
Yeah,
Kennedy.
It takes him out of contention, and he's a capable guy.
Yeah, I think he might be gunning for something in the administration, but I don't know who else they would have. I tell you, the other good vice presidential candidate who's actually been named as a presidential candidate is Nicole Raimondo, or Gina Raimondo, who is the Commerce Secretary. She's very smart. She was the one that was responsible for the CHIPS Act and stuff, and very popular across both. Very moderate Democrat. Was the governor of Rhode Island. She'd be a good VP. I mean, they do have certain people in the administration, or you could bring in someone with a military background. Although, I don't know who there is, but I think it's. I think Kamala is definitely unpopular, but I think they're definitely giving her more opportunity to be front and center of things, so that way, in case he doesn't run again or gets, pleads the 25th Amendment because he invokes 25th because he can't serve anymore.
Hey, I know who. Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh, then you get.
That'd be a good
What's that on
choice
your
for him.
shirt? What's that thing on your shirt, Steve?
It's my Morrisville shirt. It's just so hot today. I just didn't feel like wearing a tie.
It's a Morrisville shirt, yeah.
Yeah, my bad.
It looks good. I like it.
Well, sometimes in the spring I don't wear the tie because it's just getting so hot out there. I ran a couple miles this morning. It was already like 80 degrees. So, but anyway, other things going on in the world. We're going to talk today at 11 for a few minutes. I'm going to have to leave early, but we're going to talk about the debt ceiling. This is the classic cat and mouse game. Folks, saying, well, we're going to raise the debt ceiling, and then government shuts down, and then they come together and they do it again, and they incur more debt. I mean, does it seem like this happens every year at the same time? And it's almost
but this time it's the fault of the Democrats for setting the Republicans up to something that was not possible at all, and they knew it going into it. That interim spending bill that they did the last minute, as I said before on this show, that set the country up for failure. It was wrong-minded, and the Republicans are right. There should be no increase in the debt ceiling without spending cuts in place, because the spending that was increased during the pandemic is no longer necessary. We should roll back to the levels that were pre-pandemic. It may be increase a little bit with an inflation factor, but it's wrong-minded to spend what we're spending. The reason our currency is in peril is because of the wrong-minded spending policies of the United States government. Most of that right now is on the Democrats. It's not like the Republicans haven't been here and done that too. The Democrats are definitely got a lot of egg on their face over this, and it's created havoc with our economy because of the choices they've made. It's got to stop.
Absolutely.
I don't understand. I do understand it. It's like, I don't think Joe's at the switch at all. I think it's his people. Because Joe's not at the switch because he's not capable of being the switch. And they're pushing this as aggressively as they can while they've got the time and the power to do it. But it's going to backfire on them because people are not stupid. They can see what's going on, and they understand. With their pocketbooks, they understand that this is a failed policy, and it shouldn't be permitted to go on. If you listen to David Walker, this is the existential crisis in America. It's about our spending. And China and others who have bought our dollars and that kind of thing in the past are not going to continue to do that. It's going to create really, really serious problems with hyperinflation. It's going to weaken the dollar and cause more people to go to the yuan and BRICS. It's wrong-minded, and the politicians have to wake up and smell the roses.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the danger of just I think we don't talk about it enough, but the value of the dollar, not going down, and the economy hit from so many years. But I will say this, that was going to be my final remarks, but despite all of these things that we say, and Fareed Zakaria talked about this yesterday on his show, the United States of America always manages to do pretty well. I mean, despite, China's rise and all that stuff, it's really been still continuing a higher percentage of our GDP, higher percentage of economic growth. The U.S. has always managed to stay relatively at the top. And then the other thing that we don't talk about enough, which is concerning, is whether protectionism and tariffs and build in your own country, which both Trump and Biden have sort of moved towards, both presidents on that page, does that hurt the American consumer? Because we often forget that our iPhone, for example, all the profits are made in the US, but there's so many parts that are made from different parts of the world, right? But now we're going back to saying, well, let's manufacture more in the US, let's put tariffs, and that's going to drive up the cost up of our own goods for our own consumers. So I wonder whether, that's there. I don't know. I mean, I get confused sometimes understanding.
Well, but there's got to be a strategic balance in production of American goods, so we're not so reliant on foreign sources. And this is true in chips and pharmaceuticals and other things that are strategic to our interest in the future and sustaining ourselves, because it's not good to be reliant on those economies that are our sworn enemies that want to destroy us. Why would we set ourselves up for failure? The electric cars, for example. Do you know that most all of the minerals, major minerals that are needed for the electric car production are sourced in China? That's stupid. We're giving our enemy the opportunity. We're actually funding them to compete against us. Why would we do that? That's why helium makes more sense, because we can produce our cars here. We can produce the structures here. We can produce the support systems here. Helium's the most abundant substance in the universe. And, here we are trying to, burden our grid with these electric cars. It just makes no sense.
Well, and I think, recently I heard the DOT secretary on the same radio station that I'm a commentator on, WPTF, talking about transportation in North Carolina. And I was just listening to it on a Friday night on my way to an event. And, what's interesting, what he said was that this is the big dilemma in North Carolina, whether or not, as you put more fuel efficient electric vehicles in the car, how do you tax those? How do you generate revenue? Because predominantly all of the revenues come from the gas tax. So as gas tax revenues go down, that's less money in the pot for roads, for transit.
Yeah, hydrogen solves that problem.
Well, it's a big problem in North Carolina. They're so far in the shortfall now that all the road projects getting delayed. So we have to look at what are the revenue streams for electric vehicles. Just having a lot of electric charging stations isn't going to solve the problem of generating the revenue to fund those cars on the road. And we never
tax the charging stations.
Tax the charging. I mean, there's also one thing like they're doing a pilot program where vehicle miles traveled, where you would charge based on the number of miles traveled. So those who drive more will pay more of the tax than those who drive less. I don't know. They're using this in other states, but the General Assembly of North Carolina is looking at this because this is a critically big problem right now in the state. And then the more you push for transit, you take cars off the road. Does that affect your revenue for roads, right? So
charge for transit.
Yeah, I mean, we're 400 million.
And that affects the impoverished, right? One of the reasons you push for transit is so the impoverished folks can get around.
Impoverished and those that don't necessarily have other means of getting there. But sometimes it's the poverty, and there are definitely a number of folks even here in Durham that use it to get to and from. I mean, throughout the United States, and I imagine other parts of the world, there have been free transit for a number of years, but that gravy train is about to end, like a lot of other things, because it was a pandemic related activity and all in that.
Well, okay, I have news, Mark, for you and everyone. Nothing is free. Nothing. It may don't get charged for a ticket, but you're paying for it one way or the other.
Yeah,
we're all paying for all this bullshit. And the thing is, we need to all know that and be realistic about that and make decisions based on smart business models. And I hear the pain of those who are in poverty, but the poor will always be among us because they tend to continue. And see, everyone has opportunities for growth and development in this country. They can all move forward. They can all learn, except people who are just latently not smart and can't do it. I mean, there are some people that are like that, and I admit that. But what is our duty to people that don't want to do, don't want to contribute to the
I mean, part of it is we have to
society?
remodel the education system, and I think that's what Nick has been talking about, because a lot of this stuff is outdated and is not necessarily relevant to today's times, and it definitely is, even in some cases, antiquated. I had the pleasure, and hopefully you'll go back and watch it, Nick, of interviewing King Randall. King Randall is a young 23-year-old African American that started a private school in Albany, Georgia, and he brought up some issues, and it's actually a Christian school, Dan. That is what he formed and everything. It's called the
Nice.
ex-preparatory school, and he talks about what he is teaching, and a lot of it is religious based, but it is also very much family value based. And even he was teaching some of his students about firearms, because he was like, "What, you know, if they're gonna have guns, they might as well learn how to operate,
Use them safely,
how to
yeah.
operate." Huh?
Well, yeah, use them safely.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
with YouTube right now, it's possible to learn practically anything that you want to learn. If you want to learn and want to know about it, go online, take the courses. It's free, and learn. That, I mean, it's pure laziness not to do that. If you
Google U and Wikipedia U and a number of the other U's that are out there are very much true, and yes, they do exist. The thing you have to do is do, like with anything, whether it's even what we report and everything, and the people that we talk to, we have to do some verification and make sure that some of the things that are being taught even on the Google U are actually factual, because there is some misinformation that is on those platforms as well. So you definitely need to do
well,
your
and
due diligence.
you don't think there's misinformation being taught in our universities right now to our kids? It's rampant.
No, I mean, I'm saying, but due diligence is something that I think we need to do on a regular basis. One of the things that you've heard me talk about on this show and other shows as well is this notion of critical thinking. I think that is very important and all in that. By the way, Sasha, as I'm thinking about it, and this was actually not a program person, even though I'm hoping to have him on the program, but I actually met a gentleman yesterday that had written a book about chess, and he has actually had some of the chess grandmasters that he's had the pleasure of talking to, because he actually mentioned the other Carlson, and if you say the name, I'll remember. I want to say like Pontus Carlson, that he had the pleasure of talking to, and all in that space. So Ken Mask is here in our area and is actually using chess to help our kids learn about education and all in that space. So I'm gonna definitely put him in touch with you so that you can share some of your knowledge and he can share some of his. And he's an African American gentleman, so he was actually coming by for a event at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at. But we had a nice conversation about the importance of chess, and the book that he has written, it was actually a documentary. So he actually has a documentary film about chess and chess in the school system.
Oh, I got it. It's time to close out, Mark. I've only got a minute left, so and then I got to run.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, folks, I'm going to end with my monologue today. It's we're going to talk about mental health issues this month because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's been Asian American Heritage Month. We're going to share some stories of Asian American leaders, but it's also National Tennis Awareness Month, Tennis Month, and this is an effort by the United States Tennis Association to promote the game of tennis. Today, the United States has 24 million players, many more than pickleball, squash, the other racket sports, racquetball. And there's a lot of people playing tennis, over 512 million tennis events being played or tennis instances. The sports interest has grown by 11% since 2022. And my final message is I've learned a lot of my life based on a tennis court. My strategy that I share with kids often, and I'm even sharing this during some commencement ceremonies this year, is that develop two weapons better than anybody. In tennis, it was my forehand and my speed. Defend your weaknesses and go for every shot. You may not win every match, but if you go out with all your heart every day, you'll be a champion because you've shown that you have courage, heart, a great attitude, be motivated, persistent, innovative, optimistic, and never give up. And that's why the great game of tennis has been a great game for me. I'm very passionate about it. I think we should get more kids involved in the game. And we're going to be bringing in Andy Andrews and others next week to talk about tennis, some different things that we can learn about the game, and maybe give them some different perspectives. So get out there. If you're in the U.S. listening to this, go to a park, go to a facility, go play some tennis. It's a great game. It's the game you can play the rest of your life. On that note, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back for another edition of Pod and Roku TV's edition. Thank you very much.